This is Jim Fetzer sitting in for Gary King for the new J.F.K. show. Gary has a gig in New Orleans where it's that time of year, Mardi Gras. Larry has his trusty hourglass at hand, and it's a beauty. He wanted to proceed with a show. As they say, the show must go on, but especially because Larry has been reviewing a very substantial series of episodes on Netflix about the assassination of Malcolm X. Larry, I know you found this profoundly disturbing in that it fits in with our research on JFK, no doubt on Bobby and Martin as well. So I'm very eager to hear what you've been deriving from following this series.
Absolutely, Jim. I think, first of all, the Netflix documentary is taking the nation by storm. Social media is completely abuzz on Facebook and on Twitter, where I've never seen anything like this. And the reason that we need to cover this is obviously, we're always up on the latest information and research, on the new things that are coming out. And it just so happens that this documentary is provoking, is causing the case actually to be reopened in an indirect manner, which we're going to discuss now in a couple of minutes. And that's something that's unprecedented, that something, of this magnitude that happened now is going to be 55 years on February the 21st, coming up for the 55th year anniversary, and that this has attracted so much attention, and only because of one person. And this is a one-man show, as we're going to see now in a minute. And it's been he's been investigating the case for probably 30 years, and he's a scholar. He's not a PhD, or he's not a very well-known author or anything like that. As a matter of fact, he works as a tour guide at Arlington Cemetery, of all places, So, and his name is Abdul Rahman Muhammad. And he's the one that lays out all of this evidence that was completely ignored, how the patsies were included, in the case, because it has so many similarities to the JFK assassination that I figured that it would be we would be remiss if we, did not talk about this.
Well,
and,
I'm sure that's 100% spot on, Larry. I couldn't agree more, and I'm eager to hear what you have ascertained from following this series.
And look at it this way: when did you ever expect that any of the assassinations from the 60s would be reopened?
Yeah. Not as though we don't have a mountain of evidence about what really happened to JFK.
Right. But and that's why I believe that it's of extreme importance, And like I said, the documentary is taking social media by storm, and just reading the comments, that people are posting, after binging, the word now, in Netflix language is, there's so many series, documentaries and series, that are, one after another. There could be up to 12 episodes, in the series, And so when you start and you watch the first one, it leaves you hanging, and you have to go and watch the second part, the second episode. And a lot of people, what they do is they binge. So what they're going to do nowadays is they'll watch the first one and go on and watch the second and third until they finish.
Yes.
And maybe spend a whole night,
There can actually be intellectual benefits from doing that if you have the endurance.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the good thing about this is that with Netflix, you can go back and watch it over and over and over again, and look at the things that you missed and this and that, So anyway, I put up I did a blog post that covers a lot of what the most important aspects of this. And it's so incredible because even politicians in Newark, and we're gonna mention them later on, and I'm sure you're gonna be a little revolted, when you find out, that a lot of these people in Newark, New Jersey knew who the main assailant was, who actually killed Malcolm X with a shotgun to the chest, and this was
the principal assassin.
Yeah, and it was an open secret in the community for as long as in fact, he got away with it because this man, later passed on in 2018. So he was never brought to justice, for the assassination of Malcolm X, even though everybody knew. And there are theories that this guy, and I have to agree, that he might have been some kind of FBI operative.
Yeah, that would immediately come to my mind too.
Because the way that he was protected, after the deed.
Right, they'd make sure that his identity was not revealed and he was never prosecuted for the crime, as in the case of J.F.K.
That's right.
None of the shooters were ever prosecuted, and that was part of the plan.
And that's why we want to talk about all the parallels, between one and the other. And I think it's just amazing, astounding, when you break down the Malcolm X case, the way that I have in this.
Excellent.
So let's take a look at the screen share here.
Go for it, Larry.
And I'll put up, this is the my blog there. You can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there it is, Malcolm X case to be reopened. Oh, and by the way, and I didn't mean this to, in any particular manner, but February 14, 2020 was the 55th anniversary of when Malcolm X's house in Queens was firebombed. With some Molotov cocktails.
On Valentine's Day.
Yeah, they were thrown into.
That's a real nice gesture, isn't it?
Yeah. 1 week before he's assassinated, they firebombed his house where three of his children were sleeping in one of the rooms where they firebombed actually, and put them out into the winter cold, where it was 15, 20 degrees, at 2:35 in the morning. So
nasty, but they were not killed.
Yeah, right. Well, they reacted, fast enough where they got out of the house, through the back door. But here we go. It's you want to?
Would you like me to read it?
Sure, and then I'll read a couple of paragraphs also.
Malcolm X case to be reopened. In an indirect manner, the assassination of Malcolm X, Malcolm Little, is to be reopened as a result of the vast exposure given by the Netflix 6-part documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X?
Okay, can you see this now? I just switched to the, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's the, this here is the main page there for the documentary. It says, decades after the assassination of African-American leader Malcolm X, an activist embarks on a complex mission seeking truth in the name of justice.
Oh, that's the protagonist, the lead figure in the documentary.
Yes, absolutely.
The timing of this documentary is surely meant to coincide with the 55th anniversary of his death coming up on 21 February 2020, which is what? Right around the corner, Larry. What is this? The day is the 18th.
In 3 days.
So our timing could not be better.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to preempt everything and do this.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I'm glad we did, even though Gary can't be with us. As seen with the assassinations of the 1960s, each had a patsy to blame for the deed. The storyline of the documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X, takes the viewer through many angles and perspectives and reveals that at least 4 other assassins from the Nation of Israel, NOY,
Islam.
Nation of Islam, thank you, Mosque 25 in Newark, New Jersey were involved and never brought to justice. The star of the Netflix documentary Abdur Rahman Mohammed, among several blockbuster revelations, has identified two key patsies who actually went to jail for over 20 years as punishment for what they allegedly did, but of course actually did not.
Yeah,
In the case of Malcolm X, one Talmadge Hayer was truly and genuinely found guilty, and in the government's haste to convict, both patsies were measured using the same evidence that convicted Hayer. Meaning, Larry, they just carried it over as though it implicated two persons who had nothing to do with it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, almost towards the end of the trial, Talmadge Hayer took the stand and he said, "Look, these guys had nothing to do with it, you know." And but the judge and the prosecutors did not accept it, and they just, you know, put all three of them in jail. Where the other
Larry, I'll tell you, given what I've learned about the law and the administration of justice, that makes perfect sense. There's a politicalization of the law to be used as a club or an instrument to conceal true crimes by real culprits and to punish the innocent in their stead.
Yeah, guilt by association, and it also makes you think about where were their defense attorneys? You know, what the hell? You know, where were they? You know,
right? A great point. These gentlemen were Norman 3X Butler Al-Aziz and Thomas 15X Johnson Khalil Islam from NOI Mosque number 7 in Harlem. As a result of the Netflix documentary, The Innocence Project, reminiscent of the Innocence Campaign for Lee Oswald, has agreed to bring Butler's case, survivor of the two, to the attention of Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance to reinvestigate and review the evidence. Full exoneration of the 81-year-old Butler is the goal. This is unprecedented and has raised the hopes of justice for those who find the murder of Malcolm X as the vilest and most despicable assassination of the 1960s. Larry, that's quite a claim.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly, discovery in the form of an honest review of the evidence, affidavits, and even interviews with surviving people who witnessed the events at the Audubon on 21 February 1965 would help put the case into perspective and perhaps jazz up some memories. In the case of Hayer, and as explained in the documentary in the 1960s, 70s, William Kunstler, who played a key role too in various of these investigations, the famous civil rights attorney, took up Hayer's cause to reopen the Malcolm X investigation, even petitioning Congress to do so based on a key affidavit he was able to obtain from Hayer. In this affidavit, Hayer laid out the entire operation, naming the other 4 co-conspirators. So this is the guy who actually put the shotgun to Malcolm X, right?
No. He had I believe he had a .45, one of the handguns. The shotgun. We're going to talk about that guy right now, and that's, in fact, that's the next paragraph coming up.
Okay, perfect.
And the only reason that let me also mention real quick, the only reason that this guy was captured is because he was shot by one of Malcolm X's bodyguards as he was trying to get out of the Audubon ballroom there after, you know, all the pandemonium that was unleashed. And he was shot in the leg. And then once he was outside of the Audubon, Malcolm X's people followed him, and they were beating the crap out of him, you know. And then that's when, you know, the police suddenly appeared, you know, and so that's the only reason that this guy was captured. All the other the co-conspirators, they all found their way out of the ballroom.
So if he hadn't been shot by one of Malcolm's guards, he would have got away too, and we've not known the story to this day.
Absolutely.
Perhaps the most important revelation by Mr. Muhammad has to be his tenacious and unyielding pursuit and identification of al-Mustafa Shabazz, previously known as William X. Bradley, as the so-called shotgun man who executed Malcolm X with a point-blank shotgun blast to the heart. Even today, as Muhammad has discovered, the Newark Muslim African American community lives in fear of speaking about Bradley, some even commenting that he was protected by the state until his death in 2008, where his involvement was a well-kept secret. And as you've already implied, Larry, actually widely known in the community.
not only by Joe Schmo, walking the street, but by politicians that we're going to name in a little bit here, Jim.
Very good. Some of the information presented in the Netflix documentary has previously been covered by Omar Shabazz in his three-part trilogy. The Black Zapruder Trilogy, The Murder of Malcolm X, a very well-researched and presented video analysis, which introduces actual models of the Audubon Ballroom as it was on the day of the assassination. This sounds like your reconstruction of Dealey Plaza, Larry.
Yeah. These pictures here are exactly, scale models of the Audubon, and with the people placed exactly where they were. The people, I mean, so much investigation and research has gone into this, by this other guy.
An expanded version of your reconstruction of the doorway and steps in front of the Texas School Book Depository.
That's why, I wanted to, show the parallel, and where, he, the title of this, not Netflix, rather YouTube video is the Black Zapruder Trilogy. I mean, how
yeah,
it's
who selected that title?
He did. Omar Shabazz. This
what a clever idea.
Yeah. Well, he actually in the video he says, look, there's this video exists, and the video that he's talking about is the scuffle outside of the Audubon between Hayer, the policeman, and some of Malcolm X's people. And where in that video you can see actually Shotgun Man, in there in that melee, and where they actually had pictures of him after the assassination, and nothing was ever done about it, And in this case, he's saying, well, in the Zapruder film, you can't see the assassins, but in this film that we have, outside of the Audubon, we do have the assassins,
Wow, that's really significant, Larry. Is he aware of all the research?
Yeah, and when you see it, if you, anybody who clicks here on the on my blog here, it'll take you straight to the to that video.
Is he aware of all the research on the Zapruder?
Yeah, they talk about, they even show parts of Dealey Plaza and everything, showing the parallels.
Fascinating.
That's why I figured, we had to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, obviously. Shabazz, by the way, obtained the information regarding Bradley from Abdur Rahman Mohammed, who as early as 2010 denounced the participation of Bradley in the assassination of Malcolm X. A reference to Zapruder is noted as a parallel between the two cases. Below are model representation showing inside the Audubon Ballroom at the time of the assassination.
Yeah, I found these to be just spectacular. Here you have the rostrum, the podium, and you have a model of Malcolm X, and you have the guy here, with a shotgun, and the other guys. And then here's an overhead view here. And he labels, all the people here.
Larry, this is so like your work.
Yeah. Well, I like to cite and, give credit to, what other people are doing. I think
of course.
It's fantastic. And one of the things that this guy, Omar Shabazz, talks about that Mohammed doesn't, Abdur Rahman Mohammed, is that Jimmy Breslin, who people in New York knew for many, many years as one of the star reporters there for the Daily News, was in the ballroom that day. And that Jimmy Breslin was supposed to be receiving an award, I think something maybe in Rochester and Albany or somewhere up there, up north, north of New York City. And for some reason, he canceled his trip up there to be here at this event. And it's just so incredibly coincidental that maybe he might have had some kind of, information on what was going to happen to Malcolm X. I just can't, there's no coincidences, in these assassinations of the 60s, and and Omar Shabazz, he's the only researcher that talks about this,
Well, there was video being taken inside the ballroom when the assassination took place.
No, there wasn't. There was video after.
Because you'd think, Malcolm X was such a prominent and charismatic speaker, you'd think that there would be a film of it.
Well, cameras were prohibited, you know, inside, and
They were Muslim too.
right, and supposedly also, you know, everybody was supposed to be searched, you know, for weapons. On that particular day, nobody was searched for weapons, you know. But
Why the gross inconsistency in security?
I don't know, but one of the things that is really left researchers, you know, that are really into this case, you know, very perplexed is the fact that the Nation of Islam, who was led by Elijah Muhammad,
Yeah.
and we're gonna see now, you know, the relationship that he had and and what happened with Malcolm X, you know,
He
later on.
Malcolm as a rival, as a upstart.
Well, when he was suspended from the Nation of Islam, and I don't want to give it away because we're going to
Okay, we'll get there.
Okay, we'll get there.
The following image is a composite representation of Shotgun Man by Omar Shabazz, captured from the video mentioned above. So
and it
was a sawed-off shotgun, obviously.
That's right, and this is a composite. Obviously, he put, but I thought that the work here is just the digital manipulation. Is just fantastic here. This is William Bradley right here, Jim.
Yeah, that's an actual photograph of him.
Photograph of him, and that's the way he was dressed that day, and.
But you see how clever it is, because his shotgun sort of blends in with his clothing, so it's not obvious that he's carrying one.
Oh, and witnesses that were there, some say, hey, man, this guy, he was really good with a shotgun. He knew what he was doing, you know. And then later on, you know, this guy had a very tumultuous record, you know, of narcotics, of even sexual predation, you know, and that kind of thing, and even holding up banks and everything. So that's what really gets people to think about, you know, how that this guy had to have been protected, you know. After he does this, you know, and then later on he reforms his life, you know, and he joins, you know, life, you know, there in Newark. But did
he have a conversion experience?
Exactly. And
you think he really did? Was it sincere?
Well, at least in the eyes of people, and even in the eyes of the politicians there who knew him, who actually knew him, and we're gonna mention them here.
Okay, and this is a description of Shotgun Man from the FBI document, page 97, as cited by Abdur Rahman Muhammad in the Netflix documentary. And Newark indices negative on hair. Description of only one other assailant has been determined. He is a Negro male, age 28, 6 feet 2 inches, 200 pounds, heavy build, dark complexion, wearing gray coat, and believed to be assailant who used shotgun. Hagen has refused to furnish any information other than his name and age, which is 22 years. At New York
office
indices on Hagen negative.
Now, I also want to comment. I've been into the, I've been looking at these documents of the FBI for Malcolm X. Okay, and I want to see if I can click here. Okay, no, this isn't what I wanted. But there are just so many documents on Malcolm X at the FBI vault.
That's because they were tracking him. He was
for years.
He was viewed as subversive, right? J. Edgar would have had them all over him
for a decade and change. You know, but you know what really struck me here is age 28. Didn't even. I mean, usually they say between 28 and 35, right? Right. But in this case, it's right spot on. You know, age.
They know his exact age. Yeah.
His exact height.
Exact height, his weight.
Weight. You know, heavy build, dark complexion. You know, wearing a dark gray coat. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. You know how much?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this in itself gives away, you know, the FBI on this. You know, that he was one of theirs. You know?
Right. They knew exactly who he was, and therefore could describe him.
I mean, there's no ambiguity.
Larry, it would have been much better if they'd been vague about it.
Yeah, there's no ambiguity here on his description whatsoever. You know, I mean, I think this was a real screw up here. So anyway,
Okay, don't.
this next image from the actual historical film, also presented in the Netflix documentary, shows Bradley outside the Audubon Ballroom in a scuffle with police and Malcolm X
supporters
as he
as
tries to come to
the aid of his partner in crime, Talmadge Hayer.
That's him right there, and actually you see the whole sequence there. That's why.
Well, is this him in the immediate aftermath? So does he still have his shotgun?
No, he dropped the shotgun. He left the shotgun in the ballroom. They found it immediately after.
But he certainly dressed according to the description.
Oh, absolutely, and you see he had a newspaper here, and a lot of the witnesses who saw the people that were in the first two rows, there at the ballroom, said, hey, these guys got there early and they had their noses, in newspapers just waiting, And so this is one of the markers, that later on, one of the researchers talks about.
Oh, the newspaper was a marker?
Well, a marker to
identify him as
as one of the perpetrators.
As somebody you want to not arrest, not interrogate.
Yeah.
Parallels to JFK. Many parallels exist between the JFK and Malcolm X cases, and it would be wise to name just a few since ours is a JFK assassination block. 1, security stripping. Perhaps the most glaring coincidence between the two. On 22 November 1963, the motorcycle escort was altered at Love Field, and the bubble top of the limousine was removed. In the case of Malcolm X, New York City Police Department cops were completely absent before the assassination, but suddenly appeared en masse after Malcolm was confirmed to be dead.
I think we should also, I don't know if, what you think about this, that also the parade route was changed at the 11th hour, as part of the security stripping.
Of course. Well, I go through 15 different indications of Secret Service complicity, in the
Right. Well, just, the basic.
Number 2, patsies. As mentioned, someone had to be blamed and either locked up or shut up. As mentioned above, Butler and Johnson in the case of Malcolm X and Lee Oswald in the JFK assassination. 3, forewarning of the event. For JFK, it was Miami and Chicago, where motorcades were canceled at the 11th hour after receiving threats, including one from an FBI informant by the name of Lee for the Chicago event. For Malcolm X, among many confrontations, the firebombing of his house in Queens at 2:45 a.m. with his family inside, including 4 very young girls, 1 week before his assassination, takes the cake.
The ages, by the way, of his daughters were 2, 4, I believe 5, 6, and 7 or 8. Okay, 4 daughters, and his wife was pregnant with twins at the time, if you can imagine,
Yeah.
So this is so really, I just don't, who would go and do something like that,
Yeah.
And just I'll throw something else out there,
I'll still be on the air if you do it. Just put it in the freezer.
This is something that, and again, this is theory. I haven't really investigated this angle, but Louis Farrakhan, who later, took over the Nation of Islam as their leader, his brother lived almost catty-corner to Malcolm X's house. He had an apartment there, and I read in some of these documents that the FBI has posted there on Malcolm X that there. Let me backtrack a little bit. Farrakhan was at the mosque in Boston, okay, and that there was an individual who was shot in during the assassination there, and he was not one of Malcolm X's people, but he was somebody from Boston who ended up fleeing to Florida, apparently because he got shot and they were trying to hide him and keep him away from investigators, and so that he would heal and then later on bring him back. So that's a lead that I found just by reading some of these documents on Malcolm X that are on the FBI vault there. I found that to be really, really interesting.
Well, not to anticipate, Larry, but is there any reason to believe that Farrakhan had anything to do with this?
Well, I'll tell you this. Malcolm X's daughter, I forget her last name is something like that. She was indicted for trying to assassinate Farrakhan because she was so convinced, that he had a hand,
Ah,
Yeah, yeah, we're talking about Malcolm
wow.
X's
Wow.
daughters,
So they suspected but could never prove.
Right, right.
Okay, 4. Both investigations were fully controlled by the FBI. In fact, thanks to this documentary, we now know that 9 FBI operatives were present during the assassination, Larry?
That's right.
9 were present during the assassination?
That's
With
right.
William X. Bradley, a possible FBI operative. Please access this link and peruse the many heavily redacted Malcolm X files, and you will understand what I mean. As in the JFK assassination. Go ahead.
Can you see this here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. These are the files, okay, on Malcolm X at the FBI vault, okay? And this goes on and on and on and on, Jim. It's just unbelievable, okay? You go through this and you just, it's just extends.
Larry, have you ever seen the film about Malcolm X with Denzel Washington?
Of course, yeah.
Does it bear any resemblance to what actually happened?
No, it's a Hollywood thing, so you know how that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Alas, I do.
Oh, wow. I think I lost my.
Well, there are tons of files here, Larry. Tons of files.
Let me just get back to.
Well, here's the guy. Well, that's interesting to see.
Yeah.
Him, Larry.
Yeah. That's him.
This is a guy who's dedicating himself to exposing the truth.
That's right. That's him. Let me just get back here into. Okay.
Sure.
Are you with me here?
There we are. I was on not quite completing.
We're on number 4. Okay, access this link and peruse the many heavily redacted. The reason I put that in there is because if you go and look at these documents, they are so incredibly redacted. I thought the J.F.K. documents were bad, Jim. These are just, it's just incredibly ridiculous, the amount of redactions. And if we were able to someday get the original documents, I bet you it would completely change the narrative, of this case here, so. Yeah.
After the JFK assassination, the FBI controlled everything from photos and film to how and which witnesses were to be used in the case to funnel the blame onto Lee Oswald.
Mm-hmm.
Chickens coming home to roost. Believe it or not, another important Malcolm X JFK nexus actually brought about Malcolm's undoing and can be traced back to his comments after the JFK assassination. Prior to JFK's demise, Malcolm X had been a harsh critic of the Kennedy administration and its apparent lackadaisical record on civil rights. This article, published by the New York Times, 2 December 1963, describes Malcolm's public reaction to the JFK assassination, which brought about a 90-day suspension by Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad. As he was praising the death of Jack.
No, actually, what he was trying to convey, Jim, is that chickens coming home to roost.
Yeah,
actually meant that the barbarism that and all the hate and all the murders and the racial thing going on in the U.S. was coming back,
but he's not trying to parallel with the DM brothers assassination.
To affect the president of the United States. So in here he's mentioning the assassination of the Jim brothers in Vietnam, but he was also he also talked about how all these cases, for example, the bombing in Birmingham of the little girls,
Yeah.
And,
just like Just look at that photograph. It strikes me how well Denzel Washington was cast. I mean, he bears
Yeah,
a striking resemblance to
yeah,
to
yeah.
Malcolm X.
And the portion here of this article of what he said that day that really came back to bite him, to really affect him, is where he said here, being an old farm boy myself, chickens coming
Yeah,
home to roost
yeah,
really did make me sad. They've always made me glad. Okay, so it was taken out of context,
right.
and towards the end of this post we're going to see exactly what he meant by that context. Okay,
Good, good,
so
good, Larry.
so
Yeah,
here as a
yeah.
result.
As a result of the suspension, Malcolm X splintered away and went on to form his own African American Muslim organization, the MMI, Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and the OAAU, Organization of African American Unity. That must have pissed off Elijah Muhammad.
Oh yeah, because see, in the first one, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated was for African Americans who wanted to remain Muslims and continue, in the religion of Islam. Okay, but the other one, the OAAU, was an organization where you didn't have to be Muslim, to be in this organization. So he was actually covering all the bases of all African Americans, living in the U.S.
That
And that
would
was
have gone down very badly with
oh yeah,
Elijah Muhammad, in the hope of galvanizing and consolidate what in his mind was a true expression of what Islamic religion should be like and how it should apply to African Americans. Moreover, a Pan-African model in the Western Hemisphere is what Malcolm X was proposing, where civil rights could truly have a chance of surviving. His hope of globalizing his dogma was supported by Islamic countries around the world who received him as a virtual head of state when he visited those countries for 4 months in 1964. Malcolm X was closely monitored during the sojourn with a fear that his views on African American oppression and discrimination would embarrass the United States in international circles, of course, in the hope of bringing about reform in America.
Yeah, and also one of the most important things here is that he was undergoing a transformation here. When he was under Elijah Muhammad, he was more militant. He was more, because the Nation of Islam wanted separation of the races. Okay, when he goes to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and then he goes and he visits all these countries, Egypt, and everywhere he went, he was received, like a head of state, and this really scared, the intelligence community who were following him and were reporting on everything that he was doing, So he's out there for 4 months. When he comes back, he's had this sort of transformation, where now, he understands that Islam, Muslims do not differentiate races, that you have to accept all the races, and so he's softening, his image in that manner, because obviously if you look at some of his speeches, in the late 50s and early 60s, very fiery, but he's following, he's following what Elijah Muhammad was preaching, and so that's why, this Malcolm X, is being really, really understood now, especially now, with this documentary, and I think, it's really being well received here. So the Nation of Islam
was now bereft of its best orator and attraction. Neither Elijah Muhammad nor any of his sons possessed the public persona that Malcolm carried. Malcolm was sure to attract many of Elijah Muhammad's followers, or even one of his sons. Akbar was said to have been in complete disagreement regarding Malcolm X's suspension and other so-called woes. In other words, he was more inclined to follow Malcolm X than he was his own father.
That's right, and he disagreed with what his father was doing, and I have to, because I don't mention it here in this post, but one of the what they call the straw that broke the camel's back in the in the relationship between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad was when Malcolm X had this conference, and he revealed the fact that Elijah Muhammad had fathered 8 children from teenage girls that he had as secretaries, some of them even twice, for a 70-year-old man who's
He is
supposed.
fathering women by his secretaries.
Yeah.
This is like Lyndon, who was having his secretaries in the Oval Office. Once Lady Bird walked in, and he insisted thereafter the Secret Service notify him anytime the First Lady left the quarters.
Yeah, and so this revelation by Malcolm X was obviously not very well taken by Elijah Muhammad, and that's where this whole all this machinations and all this conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X comes about. But still, and in the case here of Akbar, he let's just read a little bit of this where he said it's difficult to believe that he had nothing to do with the Molotov bombs thrown in Malcolm's home. And this is Elijah Muhammad's younger son talking here. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that he was either directly or indirectly involved. I mean, this is his son talking, about this. The above words were aimed at Elijah Muhammad, chief of the Black Muslims, by his youngest son Akbar. So Akbar here, and I mean, this is a very revealing article here, and I found this in one of those files, from the FBI. I mean, anybody can go and look at this, and you find, a lot of really, really good information. I've never seen anybody, talk about this, But here, what happened is that Akbar went to Egypt and he studied in Cairo. He did almost the same thing that Malcolm did, and he comes back. And okay, so right here, during his visit, talk about leader of separatists, he's starting to talk about now that his father is a homemade religion, and it's really a cult of sorts, that it's not really, doesn't really follow, the true version of Muslim law, because this guy was studying in Cairo. Instead of hatred for blue-eyed devils as espoused by his father's cult, he preached a brotherhood of all mankind, regardless of color. And this is exactly the transformation that Malcolm X underwent. And obviously it was totally against what Elijah Muhammad wanted, because he wants
Larry, this is a life and death issue. I can see exactly how this is playing out politically.
Oh, of course.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and so you've got this going on, and you've got all of these things going on with the FBI and the people in Newark, and they had rented out the Audubon in January a couple of times, and it seems like the night before the assassination there was a dance there, sponsored by the Nation of Islam, where they actually went through all of the minute details of how they were going to carry out the assassination the next day. And I'm going to explain. For example, I am sure everybody knows about the incident that starts the assassination, where supposedly the 2 guys that were sitting next to each other, one of them put his hand in his pocket and said, get your hand out of my pocket, and word. And that's where Malcolm, says, hold it.
This was a distraction, so the shooter could take him out while he's distracted by an
not only that, somebody throws a smoke bomb in that area, okay, which, right at that time, then you get a smoke bomb and you get this commotion going, and that's what facilitated the positioning for the assassins. And in this case, and let's go up here and show you guys, for this guy right here to do what he did, with his, okay. So
serious stuff.
Oh yeah. So this is where the chickens coming home to roost gets really explained.
Getting back to the chickens coming home to roost metaphor, when the Rockefeller Commission convened in 1975, by the way, that's the same year that William Colby testifies to Congress that the agency owns everyone of any significance in the media.
Absolutely.
The following interpretation was offered right off the bat. presented to the Rockefeller Commission on CIA, March 26, 1975. We come here to echo the words of a very wise and much misunderstood man. His name was Malcolm X, and he was one of the most brilliant political observers and social analysts of our generation. After the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X observed that the act was an example of chickens coming home to roost. People didn't understand his meaning. He was criticized for his statement in both the black and the white communities. It was not long until Malcolm X also fell victim to assassins' bullets. 10 years after the death of Malcolm, we are in a better position to understand his words. We know of CIA domestic surveillance activities of infiltration and, in some instances, provocation. We have substantial reason to believe that CIA operatives have been involved in assassination planning abroad, if not also in actual assassinations or attempted assassinations. We have reason also to believe that domestic forces and foreign assassination were linked. That is, that the CIA engaged in clandestine cooperative efforts with the mafia or representatives of organized crime. With all these suspicions and revelation now becoming public knowledge, the climate is ripe for understanding Malcolm X's observation over a decade ago. By chickens coming home to roost, Malcolm was saying that a CIA who will join forces with organized crime to assassinate foreign leaders will not hesitate to do the same thing right here in America in the assassination of our president. How true.
Exactly. And how Malcolm X had that pegged, right off the bat there, Jim, is just unbelievable,
In finalizing this post, I must make the observation that the online Malcolm X documents, with their heavy redactions, still provide researchers with many new leads and information that has never been published for those who want to plunge into that rabbit hole. I have extensive experience researching JFK documents, and redactions are accepted as part of the job. And researchers have had to nibble on what is left on that bone. In the case of Malcolm X, however, even with the numerous redactions seen in these FBI documents, they reveal the incredible ongoing FBI surveillance of the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X. That Nation of Islam and Malcolm X were subjected to for more than a decade, and most importantly, how African-American FBI informants were interwoven into the day-to-day activities of both entities. Critical reports of the 9 FBI informants present at the Audubon are embedded within these redacted documents, and, as Marable writes in his epic volume, Malcolm X, A Life of Reinvention, surely the FBI would have caught the moment in which Elijah Muhammad's lieutenants transmitted the orders to kill, and it is still being masked by these redactions, believe it or not. One of the most important revelations of the Netflix documentary has to do with Malcolm secretly recording a pitch by FBI agent Arthur B. Fulton, who on 4 January 1964 attempted to offer money and recruit him to become an informant after he had been suspended by Elijah Muhammad. I don't have to tell you how that turned out.
That's incredible that they would try to recruit Malcolm X, to be an informant. He said
against Elijah Muhammad.
In the Netflix documentary, they present the actual recording, that Malcolm X did, on this guy.
You can stop share if we've done the blog.
Yeah, I wanted to go right here.
Oh, there's something else you want to show.
Yeah, I want to show some. Yeah, I want to show some. Can you see that?
Not yet. No.
Okay, let me go here. I'll stop it and start again, because this is really going to blow you away. Okay, you got this guy here?
That's the same. Here we go. Now I see him. Yeah.
Okay, that's Bradley. Years later.
This is our actual shooter.
That's right. That's right. After
at Xbox.
Yeah, but that's
he assassinated a really significant figure in American history, a really brilliant social analyst and critic, actually. I have great admiration for Malcolm X, Larry.
After you study, what he did. Now I want to show you a couple more. This is Raz Baraka. He is the mayor of Newark, and they asked him in the Netflix documentary, were you aware of this guy? And he says, yeah, I know all about Shotgun Man. I mean, This is disgusting. You got politician here, Jim, who's acknowledging that he knows all about Shotgun Man.
Were they worried they might be hit too if they were to expose?
Their argument here is that, well, you know, where's your evidence? You know, I mean, this guy came and went, and then guess who? Also,
Cory Booker.
Cory Booker knew him well. He knew William Bradley well. He even
Did he really?
It's in the Netflix documentary. They go up to Capitol Hill.
Larry, that's very disturbing.
And it's, you know, to such an
Here's
extent.
the guy who's offering himself as a candidate for president of the United States.
Well, check this out. You know, Cory Booker knew this guy so well that he was in a commercial, you know, for his reelection as mayor of Newark. And here's William Bradley right here in
Unbelievable, Larry. That's great stuff.
Just kind of disturbing, huh?
Great stuff, Larry.
So that's
you do your homework, my friend.
So there you go. And all our viewers here, I'm sure they're gonna go running, you know, and get their Netflix thing going, you know, and binge watch. You know.
Larry, I'll get this to Gary and we'll get it up in time for the anniversary.
Yeah. Hopefully
3 days hence, we should have it up. I'll put it up on Twitter.
And I hope that you know, our, you know, people, you know, start to look at the life of Malcolm X, you know, in a different light now, you know, and because don't forget that, you know, the media, you know, controls everything, you know, and the media is bought and paid for, like you mentioned, you know, with Colby and how everything is, you know, controlled by so, you know, the deep state. And so the way that Malcolm X has also always been portrayed has always been as a militant, you know, in fact, they've acknowledged, you know, that he was brilliant, that he was very smart, you know, but they were always, you know, going back to his early life, you know, where he went to prison, you know,
yeah.
and this and that, you know, and the narcotics and blah, 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 you know, but, you know, the life of Malcolm X, you know, is something that, you know, people are going to start, you know, really, really looking at it very, very closely now, especially with this documentary.
Larry, you've done a great job with us. I'm very, very favorably impressed. I'm very glad you've done this before the observance and that we'll do our best to get it up and have it available to the public on that very date, 3 days hence. On behalf of Gary King, therefore, I want to thank Larry Rivera for a masterful summation about this Netflix series, which I encourage everyone to watch, Who Killed Malcolm X? A significant figure, but not very well understood, an important part of American history. On behalf of Gary King, Larry Rivera, we thank you all for watching.